Most businesses believe they have systems. They say things like, "This is how we do things. This is our process. This usually works." But what they actually have are habits. Habits are patterns repeated over time. They rely on memory. They rely on people. They rely on attention. Systems are different. A system does not depend on who is present. It does not depend on someone remembering what to do. It produces a consistent outcome, even when conditions are not ideal. This distinction matters more than most businesses realize. Because habits work until they don't. They work when the team is small. They work when volume is low. They work when nothing unexpected happens. But growth introduces pressure, more requests, more decisions, more variability. And habits do not scale under pressure. When a business grows, habits start breaking silently. Tasks get delayed. Steps get skipped. Decisions depend on whoever is available. Nothing collapses all at once. Performance just becomes inconsistent. This is why many businesses feel unstable, despite working harder. They don't lack effort. They lack structure. A habit answers the question, "What do we usually do?" A system answers a different question. What happens every time, regardless of circumstances? That difference defines reliability. Without systems, outcomes depend on discipline. With systems, outcomes depend on design. And discipline is a fragile foundation for growth. People get tired. Attention drops. Priorities shift. A business built on habits must constantly compensate with effort. A business built on systems uses effort to improve the structure itself. This is not about rigidity. It is about repeatability. Growth requires repeatable decisions, repeatable actions, repeatable results. Without systems, growth amplifies chaos. With systems, growth amplifies clarity. Habits often look like systems because they create the appearance of consistency. Things get done. Customers get responses. Invoices get sent. Content gets published. From the outside, it looks structured. But internally, the business is relying on memory, individual judgment, and constant attention. This is why habits are dangerous. They function in stable conditions, then collapse when variables increase. Growth increases variables. More customers means more edge cases. More requests means more interruptions. More volume means less time to think. In that environment, habits create bottlenecks. The work starts accumulating around certain people. The same questions repeat. The same mistakes return. And the business begins to run on exceptions. Instead of, "This is how it works," the reality becomes, "It depends." It depends on who is available. It depends on who remembers. It depends on who has context. This creates hidden costs. Training becomes slow because nothing is documented clearly. Delegation becomes risky because quality depends on personal judgment. Execution becomes inconsistent because priorities are not enforced by design. Eventually, the business becomes fragile. Fragility is not always visible. Sometimes revenue still comes in. Sometimes clients still stay. But the operating load increases. More reminders, more follow-ups, more internal messages, more time spent clarifying tasks. That load is the cost of missing systems. A system is not a checklist. A system is not a tool. A system is not a set of rules people try to follow. A system is a repeatable mechanism that reduces dependence on attention. It creates alignment by default. It answers, what triggers the process? What is the input? What is the expected output? What are the steps that cannot be skipped? What is the definition of done? What happens when something goes wrong? These questions do not exist to create bureaucracy. They exist to protect reliability. Reliability is what allows growth to compound. Without reliability, every new client adds uncertainty. Every new project adds volatility. Every new channel adds operational debt. And operational debt behaves like financial debt. It accumulates quietly, then demands payment under pressure. This is why businesses often feel fine until they hit a ceiling. The ceiling is not market size. It is not competition. It is not talent. It is the maximum volume the business can handle without formal structure. Habits reach that limit quickly. Systems extend it, not by making the business complex, but by making it repeatable. Repeatability is what turns effort into leverage. To understand whether a business has systems, you don't need to look at documentation. You need to look at behavior under stress. Systems reveal themselves when volume increases, when timing tightens, and when unexpected situations appear. If outcomes remain consistent, a system is present. If outcomes fluctuate, habits are in control. A real system has three defining properties. The first is clear triggers. A system starts for a reason, not because someone remembers to act. An event happens. A condition is met. The process begins. When triggers are unclear, work relies on vigilance, and vigilance does not scale. The second property is defined constraints. A system limits options. It defines what must happen, what cannot happen, and what is outside scope. Without constraints, people improvise. Improvisation creates variation. Variation creates unpredictability. Systems reduce variation by design. They do not depend on best intentions. They depend on enforced structure. The third property is observable outcomes. A system produces an output that can be evaluated without debate. Either the outcome exists or it doesn't. Either it meets the standard or it doesn't. When outcomes are ambiguous, feedback disappears. And without feedback, improvement stalls. These three elements are what separate systems from routines. Triggers replace memory. Constraints replace judgment. Outcomes replace opinions. When all three are present, the business stops negotiating with itself. Decisions move upstream. Problems are detected earlier. Corrections become smaller. This is why systems feel slower to set up, but faster to operate. They front-load thinking to reduce execution costs later. Most businesses avoid this step because it feels like friction. But that friction is temporary. The cost of missing systems is permanent. It shows up as repeated explanations, manual corrections, and decisions that depend on context instead of structure. Over time, this erodes focus. People spend more energy maintaining operations than improving them. A system reverses that equation. It creates stability first. Then optimization becomes possible. Without stability, optimization is guesswork. With stability, improvement compounds. This is the point where growth stops being chaotic and starts being intentional. At some point, a business reaches a phase where systems are no longer optional, not because someone wants to be more organized, but because the cost of improvisation becomes too high. When volume increases, small inconsistencies multiply. A misstep becomes a delayed delivery. A delayed delivery becomes a customer issue. A customer issue becomes a reputation issue. This is how operational debt turns into business risk. Without systems, growth adds stress. With systems, growth adds capacity. The turning point is simple. If outcomes depend on who is working today, who remembers the context, or who happens to notice a problem early, then the business is operating on habits. And habits will always cap scale because they rely on attention. Systems reduce the need for attention. They move reliability into design. That is why systems change the nature of work. Less time is spent chasing tasks. Less time is spent correcting errors. Less time is spent clarifying responsibilities. More time is spent improving what exists. This is also where leadership changes. Instead of being the person who holds everything together, the operator becomes the person who improves the structure. That shift is what unlocks stable growth. Not hype, not effort, not more tools, structure. When a business replaces habits with systems, performance becomes repeatable. And once performance is repeatable, growth stops being a gamble.